My name is Bianca Russo. I'm 34 years old, and about 3 months ago, I ended a relationship in the middle of my own kitchen without raising my voice once. Not because of a fight, not because of betrayal in the way people expect, but because of one sentence. He said it like it made perfect sense, like it was logical, like I would naturally agree. I think our relationship should be open, but only on my side. That was the moment everything became simple. I work as a corporate attorney for a mid-sized law firm in Oklahoma City. Most of my days are spent reviewing contracts, preparing filings, and dealing with people who would rather avoid problems than actually solve them. The work is structured, predictable, and the outcomes are usually tied to one thing: documentation. Facts matter, clarity matters, and once something crosses a certain line, you don't negotiate with it, you correct it. I built my life the same way. I own a 3-bedroom house on the northwest side of the city. Nothing extravagant, just something stable. A small backyard, 2-car garage, quiet street where nothing unexpected happens. I bought it years before I met him. Every payment, every bill, every decision tied to that house has always been mine. That matters. My routine is consistent. I leave around 8 in the morning, get back sometime between 6 and 7, depending on the workload. Evenings are quiet. Sometimes I read, sometimes I watch something mindless, just to let my brain slow down. I like knowing what my days look like. I like systems that work. He was the opposite of that. Adrian Keller is 29. He works as a hairstylist at a busy salon downtown. Social, expressive, the kind of man who fills a room without trying. People orbit around him. They always have. When we met a little over 2 years ago, that energy felt refreshing. He moved into my house about 8 months before everything ended. At the beginning, it worked. I handled the mortgage, utilities, insurance, everything structural. Adrian covered groceries most of the time and paid for dinners or weekend plans here and there. It wasn't perfectly balanced, but it didn't feel unfair. At least not then. Adrian had a way of speaking with certainty. Even when he was wrong, he delivered things like conclusions instead of opinions. At first, I interpreted that as confidence. Later, I realized it was something else. He didn't just believe he was right. He expected you to adjust until he was. Still, nothing in our day-to-day life felt serious enough to challenge directly. Small things, minor disagreements, nothing worth turning into a full conflict. And I don't ignore problems. That's something my job trained out of me a long time ago. Small issues don't stay small if you let them sit. So when Adrian came home that Tuesday evening and said he had been thinking about our relationship, I paid attention. He didn't ease into it. He never does. He sat across from me at the kitchen counter while I was finishing leftovers and folded his arms like he was about to present a case. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he said. That phrase usually means one thing. The decision has already been made. Now it's just a matter of explaining it. He started talking about how traditional relationships are outdated, how people limit each other, how modern couples are more flexible, more open, more evolved. At first, it sounded like something he picked up from a podcast. Then it became specific. He said he thought our relationship would be healthier if we made it open. I set my fork down. "Open how?" I asked. "Because people use that word differently." Adrian smiled slightly, like I had just asked the right question. "I think I should have the freedom to see other people," he said. "Nothing serious, just options, experiences." I let that sit for a second. Then I asked the only question that mattered. "So that means I'd be seeing other people too?" That was when something shifted. Not dramatically, just enough. He leaned back in his chair and shook his head. "Not exactly. Of course not." According to Adrian, the arrangement only worked if he was the one with outside options. He said my personality wasn't the type that needed that kind of freedom, that I was more grounded, more stable. He even said it like it was a compliment, like he was simplifying things for me. In his mind, it was fair. He would have options. I would stay committed. He explained it the same way someone outlines a business idea they're proud of. Structured, confident, already finalized. He expected resistance, an argument, maybe even a negotiation. Instead, I nodded once. "Okay," I said. He stopped. Just for a second. His eyes narrowed slightly, like he was trying to figure out if he heard me correctly. "You're serious?" he asked. "I'm serious," I said. And I was, just not in the way he thought. Adrian stared at me for a moment longer, like he was waiting for the rest of the reaction. It didn't come. No raised voice, no questions, no visible frustration. Just stillness. And in that silence, I could see him recalibrating, trying to understand why the conversation wasn't unfolding the way he expected. Then, slowly, a smile crept onto his face. Not relief. Satisfaction. Like he had just won something. "Good," he he said, leaning forward again, because I've actually thought about how this would work. Of course he had. Adrian didn't bring up ideas unless he'd already built the entire structure around them. He started outlining his version of rules. Honesty mattered, according to him, but not details. If he went out with someone, I wasn't supposed to ask questions. It was meant to stay light, casual, modern. He kept using that word, modern, as if that made the imbalance disappear. While he was talking, I stood up and carried my plate to the sink. The water ran softly as I rinsed it, his voice continuing behind me like background noise I no longer needed to process. There's a moment sometimes when something shifts internally. Not loudly, not dramatically, just final. This was one of those moments. Adrian was still talking when I turned the faucet off. And I think as long as we respect each other's space, this could actually make us stronger, he said. Stronger. I dried my hands slowly, then turned back to face him. I understand, I said. He nodded, encouraged. Right? That's what I'm saying. If that's what you want, I continued, then you're free to do that. He blinked. Exactly, he said a little too quickly. But not as my boyfriend. That was where everything stopped. Not gradually. Completely. The silence that followed felt different. Sharper. Adrian's expression shifted like something inside him had just slipped out of place. What? He said. If you want the freedom to see other people, I repeated calmly, you're free to do that. Just not while being in a relationship with me. He stared at me, searching my face for something. Uncertainty, maybe. Doubt. There wasn't any. That's not what I meant, he said, his tone tightening. The relationship stays the same. That's the point. No, I said. That's your point. He leaned forward, frustration starting to show. You're overreacting, he said. This is literally just about having options. It doesn't change how I feel about you. I didn't respond to that, because it didn't matter. Instead, I asked a practical question. How quickly can you pack? For a second, he actually laughed. A short, disbelieving sound. Okay, now you're being dramatic. I didn't move. Didn't smile. Didn't soften. That's when he realized. You're serious, he said again, but this time it wasn't a question. I turned and walked upstairs. Behind me, I could hear his footsteps following, faster now, his voice rising as he tried to pull the conversation back into something he could control. Bianca, come on, you're twisting this, he said. That's not what I said. I didn't answer. I opened the closet and pulled out 2 empty suitcases. Set them on the bed. Then I started packing. At first, he kept talking, trying to reframe it. You're acting like I cheated or something. I didn't. I'm being honest with you. Shirts folded. Pants stacked. You should actually appreciate that I told you instead of just doing it. Shoes, 1 pair at a time. That's what people do in mature relationships. His tone shifted again when he realized I wasn't engaging. Are you seriously not going to say anything? I zipped the first suitcase halfway and moved to the second. That's it? He pressed. You're just going to throw me out because you don't like the idea? I paused then, looked at him. It's not about liking it, I said. It's about what it is. And what is it? He shot back. A relationship where you expect commitment from me while removing it from yourself. He opened his mouth to argue, but I continued before he could. That's not something I participate in. For a second, he didn't have a response. Then the anger came. Sharp, immediate. This is insane, he said. You're blowing this completely out of proportion. I went back to packing. That's your perspective, I said. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing now. So what? You're just going to end everything? Just like that? Yes. No hesitation. No emotion attached to it. Just a fact. That seemed to hit him harder than anything else. Because there was nothing to push against. No argument to win. No reaction to manipulate. Just a decision that had already been made. For the next 20 minutes, he cycled through every version of the same argument. I misunderstood. I was being insecure. I was overreacting. I was ruining something good. None of it changed anything. When the suitcases were full, I closed them and carried them downstairs. He followed, still talking, but there was something different in his voice now. Less control, more edge. I set the suitcases by the front door. You should call someone, I said, or get a ride. He stared at me like he was waiting for the moment I would back down. It didn't come. You're actually doing this, he said. I am. He shook his head, pulling out his phone. This is ridiculous, he muttered as he ordered a ride. We stood there in silence after that. 15 minutes. No more arguments. Just the quiet space between two people who were no longer anything to each other. When the car pulled up, he grabbed the suitcases and dragged them outside. Then he stopped at the walkway and turned back toward me. You're going to regret this, he said. You just threw away a perfectly good relationship because of your ego. I met his gaze. Didn't argue. Didn't defend. Because there was nothing left to explain. He shook his head one last time and got into the car. I watched it pull away. Then I closed the door and locked it. The sound was small, but final. The next morning, before work, I stopped by a locksmith and scheduled a lock change for that afternoon. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, just clarity. He wanted freedom. Now he had it, just not from inside my house. From my perspective, the situation was already finished. Clean, simple, resolved. But clarity isn't always mutual. For the first 2 days, I didn't hear from Adrian at all. No messages, no missed calls, nothing. Silence. The kind that usually means one of two things: acceptance or calculation. By Thursday night, I had my answer. My phone lit up with a message just after 10:30. A long one. Adrian said I had embarrassed him, that I had forced him into an uncomfortable situation, scrambling to stay with a friend because of what he called my overreaction. According to him, a mature person would have had a conversation. Set boundaries. Worked through it. Not escalated. I read the message once. Then I set my phone down. No response. An hour later, another message came through. Shorter this time. When can I come get the rest of my stuff? That part made me pause, because there wasn't much left. When I packed his things, I had been thorough. Clothes, shoes, tools, personal items, everything that was clearly his. The only things still in the house were minor. A few toiletries in the bathroom, some products in the shower. Nothing that required urgency. Still, I replied the next morning. Saturday afternoon, text before you arrive. His response came almost immediately. A thumbs up. That was it. Saturday came and went. No message. No arrival. Nothing. Later that evening, another text. Got busy. I'll come by sometime next week. That was when something shifted again. Not emotionally, strategically. Because at that point, it was clear this wasn't about picking up a few remaining items. It was about keeping the situation open, unresolved, something he could step back into whenever it suited him. And that wasn't going to happen. The following week confirmed it. Adrian didn't come back for his things. He came back with something else entirely. About 7 days after he left, I checked my mail and found an envelope with my full name typed neatly across the front. No handwriting. No return name. Just a small legal office address in Oklahoma City. I didn't need to guess what it was. Inside was a formal letter. Adrian was pursuing legal action. I read it once. Then again, slowly. According to the letter, he was claiming unlawful eviction and wrongful removal of his property. He argued that he had established residency in my house during the 8 months he lived there, and because of that, I had no right to remove him or change the locks without proper notice. There was more: emotional distress, temporary housing costs, replacement of items he claimed were missing, and at the bottom, the part that mattered most: a demand. Several $1,000s to resolve the matter without further legal escalation. I set the paper down on the table and just looked at it, not angry, not surprised, just recognizing the pattern. This wasn't about housing. It wasn't about legality. It was about control. He had lost it in the house. Now he was trying to regain it somewhere else. The problem was, he had chosen the wrong arena. This is what I do. Every day. Contracts. Liability. Documentation. People making claims they don't fully understand. The letter was written with confidence, but the substance behind it? Thin. Very thin. So instead of reacting emotionally, I did what I always do when something legal lands in front of me. I reviewed the facts. No lease. No rental agreement. No rent payments. The property solely in my name. And most importantly, documentation. Messages. Clear ones. Him proposing the open relationship. Him arranging his own ride. Him leaving voluntarily with his belongings. Me offering him a time to collect anything else. Nothing about that resembled unlawful eviction. Still, I didn't respond personally. When something is close to you, objectivity matters more than ego. So I forwarded the letter to a colleague at my firm, someone who handles civil disputes. He called me about 15 minutes later, laughing, not in a cruel way, more like disbelief. This is what he sent you? He asked. Yes. He paused. He really thinks this holds up? That seems to be the assumption. He exhaled slowly. All right, let's walk through it. We did, line by line. And the conclusion didn't change. Adrian had moved in as a boyfriend, not a tenant. He never paid rent. He had no agreement, written or verbal, establishing tenancy. And most importantly, he left. On his own. That detail alone dismantled most of his claim. My colleague drafted a response that same afternoon. Professional. Calm. Direct. It stated clearly that Adrian had been a guest in the home, not a tenant, that his claims had no factual or legal basis, and that if he chose to continue pursuing the matter, we would seek reimbursement for all legal costs incurred. That last part usually makes people stop. Reevaluate. Step back. Adrian didn't. 2 weeks later, I received notice. He had filed the claim. Small claims court. At that point, it stopped being inconvenient and became inevitable. Because courtrooms don't operate on confidence. They operate on evidence, and Adrian had just decided to test that. The hearing was scheduled about a month later at the Oklahoma County Courthouse. Small claims court isn't dramatic. No long speeches, no jury, no theatrics. Just facts, documents, and a judge who has already seen every variation of the same mistake. Adrian arrived early. I saw him in the hallway before the case was called, standing beside his attorney, posture straight, expression composed, the same expression he used whenever he believed he had already won. He glanced at me briefly, then looked away. No acknowledgement. No conversation. Just distance layered over assumption. When our case was called, we stepped inside. The room was quiet, functional. Nothing about it invited emotion. The judge asked for a summary. Adrian's attorney went first. He framed the situation cleanly, at least on the surface. Adrian had established residency. He had lived in the home for 8 months. He had been removed without notice, forced to find temporary housing, subjected to emotional and financial distress. If you only listened to that version, it almost sounded convincing. Then it was our turn. My attorney didn't raise his voice, didn't dramatize anything. He simply walked through the timeline. Adrian moved into my house as a boyfriend. No lease, no rental agreement, no rent. He submitted the property records first. Clear, undisputed. Then came the messages. Printed, organized, precise. One showed Adrian explaining the open relationship he wanted, specifically the version where only he had outside options. Another showed him ordering his own ride. Another confirmed he left the house voluntarily with packed suitcases. And another showed me offering a specific time for him to return and collect anything else. No gaps, no ambiguity. Just sequence. The judge read everything in silence for a few minutes. Then he looked up and asked Adrian 3 questions. Did you sign a lease? No. Did you pay rent? No. Were you prevented from returning to collect your belongings? A pause. Then, no. That was it. 3 answers. 3 confirmations. The judge leaned back slightly in his chair and explained in a calm, measured tone that living in someone's home as a romantic partner does not automatically establish tenancy, not without a lease, not without rent, not without any agreement that defines it. Adrian's claim didn't meet that standard. Dismissed. Just like that. But we weren't finished. My attorney spoke again. Requested reimbursement. Legal fees. Filing costs. Time spent responding to a claim that had no legal foundation. The judge reviewed the documentation, page by page. Numbers. Invoices. Hours. Then he nodded once. Approved. Mr. Keller, he said, you are ordered to pay the defendant the amount of $7,400. The shift was immediate. Up until that moment, Adrian had been sitting upright, controlled, irritated, but confident. That disappeared. Fast. His expression changed like something inside him had finally caught up with reality. He looked at his attorney first, like this was a misunderstanding, like someone would correct it. No one did. That's not fair, he said, the control slipping slightly from his voice. The judge didn't react to the tone. He simply explained. Filing a claim without sufficient legal basis still forces the other party to spend time and money defending themselves. The court does not reward that, especially when documentation clearly shows the situation was misrepresented. In simple terms, this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a mistake. An expensive one. Adrian tried to speak again, but the judge cut it off. The order had already been entered. If he disagreed, he could pursue an appeal through the proper process. That was the end of it. We stepped out into the hallway. For a moment, neither of us said anything. Then Adrian finally looked at me. This didn't have to go this far, he said. I didn't respond immediately. Because that sentence, it was familiar, rewritten, refined, but the same. In his version of the story, I had escalated things. I had made it bigger, more complicated, more final. In reality, he had asked for a relationship that didn't include commitment. I ended it. He chose to turn that into a legal fight. And now we were standing in the outcome of that choice. You're right, I said finally. That seemed to catch him off guard. It didn't. For a second, it looked like he might say something else. Apologize. Explain. Reframe it one more time. But he didn't. He just looked away and walked off down the hallway. My attorney and I stepped outside into the parking lot. He let out a quiet laugh. That might be the most expensive relationship lesson I've ever seen someone give themselves. At the time, I thought that was the end of it. And in most ways, it was. About 3 weeks later, I received confirmation through the court that the payment had been made. No message. No explanation. No attempt to reopen anything. Just compliance. Clean. Final. From the night Adrian sat across from me in my kitchen and explained the arrangement he wanted, to the moment the payment cleared, it took just under 3 months. 3 months to turn one sentence into a lawsuit, and a lawsuit into a judgment. Looking back, the strange part isn't what happened. It's how easily it could have not happened. If he had simply said he wanted something different, we could have ended it that same night. Quietly. Normally. Like adults. But that wasn't what he wanted. He wanted the relationship to stay exactly the same, while changing the rules in his favor. And when that didn't happen, he needed someone to blame. That might work in conversations, with friends, on social media, but not in a courtroom. Because there, everything comes down to one thing: what can be proven, and what can't. In the end, it all traced back to that moment in my kitchen. When he explained what he wanted, he expected an argument, a negotiation, a compromise. Instead, he got a very simple answer. Okay, just not the version of okay he had in mind. He wanted the freedom to see other people. And technically, he got it, just without the house, without the relationship, and without the assumption that I would support it while it happened. The most expensive part of the entire story wasn't the breakup. It was the decision he made after, the one where he chose to fight something that had already ended. And that decision cost him $7,400.